Hello, hello, hello. This is so weird. I decided to go on Zoom today because I kind of got some things that I want to share with you. And well, I can only do that here. I can only do that here on Zoom. Um, I can probably do it on StreamYard, but I haven't quite gotten that far yet. So, Dave Hennel, if you're out there, are we gonna have a conference about that? Anyway, the neat thing is that Zoom is about 2 minutes behind. Excuse me. Zoom is about 2 minutes behind, and not 2 minutes, probably about 40 seconds though. And so I can see the screen and I am talking up a storm, I guess, but talking about 40 seconds behind me. So yeah, it's really an interesting experience. It is officially 7 o'clock. I am going to start off with the gratitude countdown that I do sometimes. I am super happy to be able this week to have been able to get my teachers access to a couple of apps they've been looking for a while. Want to shout out our IT person T, who was super helpful. I would also like to shout out Jeff C, who has been instrumental in getting everybody set up for our virtual school options. So those are a couple of things I'm thankful for this week. Thankful for my son and his wonderful work study experience so far, his volunteering this year in school. He's been homeschooled now since January of last year. And it's been, oh, January of this year, I'm sorry, last school year. And it's been a really, really neat journey for us. I wish I had done it sooner. Some great things. And I'll share some more with that along my journey. At any rate, this week, as I said, first of all, there is coffee. So I need somebody to pop into the chat before I get off and make sure I tell you where to get the coffee code thingy. Okay, that's super important. I will give you a quick hint right now, just because like that. Hold up. If I ever lose my faith in you, that's your hint. But I'll tell you exactly where it is and show you exactly where it is in a little bit. So I was watching All in the Family. I don't know if you remember that. Boy, the way Glenn Miller played. If you're old or if you like old sitcoms, you would know it as Archie Bunker and his wife. Archie Bunker was very much a bigot. He was used wonderful terms like spics and spades for blacks and Hispanics. And well, it's kind of interesting. I watched the first episode, which was done in 1971, and I thought, gosh, some of this rhetoric sounds so familiar, so current. And I even played it for my son, and he said, wow, how old is that again? 50 years. And it felt like I've been watching the news, I've been watching the redlining, the redistricting. And if you go to hedreich.com, you'll be able to see all of those terms defined or resource material to help you understand what redlining is. Redlining is making sure that certain areas it's segregating basically neighborhoods. Redistricting is kind of gerrymandering. It's when they draw, like for example, there's an article also at hedrick.com, links to a Texas Tribune article that talks about how creatively the districts have been drawn. You know, they don't draw voting districts in a grid. They're drawn to either dilute power or augment power. So either the Democrats make sure they draw it so that they have more votes concentrated in this district, or the Republicans might draw it so that they have fewer votes in a certain district, fewer Democratic votes. So it's voter suppression in a much softer white collar voter suppression, I guess. At any rate, we've been looking at the redlining, the voter legislation, the redistricting, all of those things. And I'm just thinking, God, this feels a lot like the civil rights era again. And I know that once George Floyd died, a lot of people were suddenly attuned to the fact that a lot of things have changed, but a lot of things still have not. So I decided to really spend the next 8 weeks giving concrete strategies that that belong to a book that I've just finished that'll be released in December. And it really talks about how to support your Black students, your Hispanic students, your gender, sexual minority is the term that I like to use because it encompasses everybody, your students from the LGBTQ community. It talks about how to not other people. And I want to do that because I feel like educators have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to not keep going in the same groove that we've been going in, because those things are not working. We're talking a lot about learning loss, but those gaps have never ceased to exist. And those gaps come from a systemic place where segregation is and systemic inequities are deeply entrenched in every societal system that we have, in our legal system, in our educational system, in our healthcare system. And so when you go back through SmallBites, if you look at some older ones, you'll see resources that show how it affects how systemic inequality affects healthcare, for example. Even to now, when people are trying to get everyone vaccinated, there are people in the Black community that are skeptical, not just because of today's science or they don't trust the science, but they're skeptical because of things that have been done to people in the past. For example, if you know what a Mississippi appendectomy is, that's when you went in to have an appendectomy and you were a woman and you came out sterile, and they tied your tubes. Those kinds of things, or the Tuskegee experiment is something that's also very commonly known. But there are things that have happened as recently as 2015 in the prison system in California that still affect our trust in systems to deliver equitable services to our communities. This week we celebrated the Truth and Reconciliation Day in Canada, and they have been really looking at what was done in the Indian schools, in the boarding schools, and looking at, they've even passed legislation to make financial restitution. So those are those kinds of things those are the bigger issues. But the things we can tackle are the things that happen in our classroom. If you've got 25, 30 kids every day, and you can make sure that they feel welcome, they feel included, they feel validated, then you are going to be able to start a chain reaction throughout your school, your campus, your community, and then throughout our cities, our countries, globally. All right, I'm going to share this wonderful, pardon me. Well, maybe I will. There should be a Zoom screen somewhere. I wonder where, there it is. Yay, Zoom screen. All right. If you do not know, I have written a book to talk about just those things, not just, I basically took all the SmallBites and then did a whole lot of research to give you Finding Your Blind Spots. There we go. Now, Finding Your Blind Spots, 8 guiding principles to help you mitigate your unconscious bias. It is available for pre-order, but mostly I just want to talk about the different things that you will find. I pulled some of the research from Finding Your Blind Spots, and I pulled it into this week's SmallBites because for the next 8 weeks, I will go ahead and talk about the research. There's some people doing some amazing work in the area of bias from a social sciences angle, from a human resources angle, from a healthcare perspective. All of those things influence our community. When we talk about learning loss and learning gaps and all of those things, what we fail to bring into the equation is that we are a part of a community. The educational system does not exist as a separate part of the community. So why do we need wraparound services? Because something's failing in the systems. So I hope that you will look at the research. It's a little heavier this week than usual, a couple of research papers and studies to read, but I hope that you'll take the time and do that. And I'll go ahead and get ready for the Friday 5. Before I start, please remember to like, subscribe, and share SmallBites with your friends. If you listen to the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., please leave a 5-star review. All right, now to the Friday 5, 20 to 30 minutes. Pull out your college reading skills and read pages 1 through 20 of Academic Discourse and the Formation of an Academic Identity, Minority College Students and the Hidden Curriculum, From John White of the University of North Florida and from Patrick R. Lowenthal of the University of Colorado at Denver. And it'll give you a little context for and understanding of hidden curriculum. Real important stuff. Talks about how language is often attributed, it's connected to intelligence, even though linguistic skills are not necessarily connected to intelligence. If I talk with an accent, that doesn't mean that I don't understand what you say, it just means I have an accent. So those kinds of things, and how academic discourse is in itself a curriculum. All right, if you've got 15 to 20 minutes, familiarize yourself with the trauma experienced by community members of the non-dominant culture with this research article, challenging definitions of psychological trauma, connecting racial microaggressions and traumatic stress. The energy that we use to think, oh no, I'm okay, it's okay. Oh, he called me, oh well, never mind. Oh, I wonder if that was, is it because I'm Black? All of those things, that energy is energy used to be fruitful elsewhere. So take a look at that. It's by from Kevin Adal, Tanya Arazo, and Rukia King. And I'm hoping that you can develop some empathy for what that looks like. If you do not know GLSEN and GLAAD's websites, they are the definitive places to go to support your students from the LGBTQ community. Explore terms and inclusive language, because yes, language is important, in GLAAD's reference guide intended for journalists, but useful for everyone, especially educators. Chances are that if you're not a member of the LGBTQ plus community, or someone who just really keeps up with race and gender linguistic changes, you might not be as sensitive to what inclusive language looks like. So take a look at that. If you have 5 to 10 minutes, use the above link and scroll down to the glossary of terms. About halfway down the page, an inclusive classroom begins with inclusive, validating, welcoming language. Finally, if you have 0 to 5 minutes, read Douglas Starr's take on scientist Jennifer Eberhardt's work on implicit bias. She is a Black female scientist, so she has her lived experience, but that has nothing really to, she has a lens, of course, but that has nothing to do with her work. She actually quantifies it using just real science about what that looks like. And a lot of the studies in the book actually talk about people who are doing studies to find out what the overarching impact of these kind of traumas, microaggressions, and implicit bias, the effects of implicit bias on people who are not a part of the non-dominant culture. All right, I'm going to leave you there. Thank you so much for coming back, for listening, for learning each week. I appreciate you being here with me. I hope that you will join me next Friday, where I will actually delve into the first guiding principle to help you become a more inclusive educator. So how do you eat an elephant? One small bite at a time. I will see you next week on Small Bites. Thank you.